Welcome to another quiet journey through the layers of forgotten time. Tonight, we'll drift gently into the world of the Norse. Not the heroic sagas, nor the thunderous halls of Valhalla, but the quieter, colder, harsher truths that lay beneath the surface of Viking society. We often imagine Vikings as bold seafarers, clad in furs and wielding axes, riding the waves toward conquest and glory. But behind every warrior stood many more, who were not free to choose their pathmen, women and children who labored in silence, in frost and in fear. And beyond even them, the Viking world held many curious layers, some steeped in myth, others in mystery, and others still in rigid ceremony and wealth. So let us begin slowly and gently. Allow your mind to ease into the past, like mist rising from a fjord at dawn. Settle in, relax your shoulders, and imagine yourself walking a narrow footpath through damp grass, your feet bare, your breath clouding in the cool morning air of the far north. This is not the Viking Age you've heard of. This is what it was really like to be at the bottom of it. Segment 1. What it was really like to be a Viking slave, imagine. You are not a warrior, nor a trader, nor a farmer in your own right. You are thrall a slave in the Viking Age. You did not choose this life. Perhaps you were taken during a raid, your village burned, your people scattered. Or perhaps you were born into it, your mother already bound in servitude, her status passing down to you like a weight too heavy to lift. Your days begin early, before the sun has risen above the jagged hills. You are stirred not by choice, but by the voice of your master, or sometimes by the dull clang of an iron pot struck impatiently. There is no privacy, no warm bed. Perhaps you sleep near the livestock, your resting place little more than straw, tucked into the corner of a shared shelter. The scent is thick with damp wool, smoke, and the earthy tang of old wood and manure. Your hands are always working. In the summer, you might be tilling the rocky soil, hauling water from the stream, or turning the heavy stones of the corru to grind grain. Your muscles ache from repetition, but you move without complaint, because you know complaint invites punishment, and punishment is not uncommon. In winter, the days grow dark early. You work indoors then, in the longhouse, close to the smoky central hearth. You help prepare meals stewing root vegetables or scraping dried fish into pots, your fingers raw and reddened by cold. If your master is wealthy, there may be many thralls like you, each with tasks divided: cleaning tools, repairing clothing, tending fires. You are spoken to, not with. No one asks your opinion, and your name may not even be your own. It might have been changed to something simpler, or something humiliating to reinforce your place. Freedom is not an expectation. It is a distant dream and rarely granted. Though some thralls were eventually freed after long service Lysingi, they often remained near the bottom of the social order, their past never truly forgotten. There is, at times, a dull rhythm to the life. It is not all terror. On some days, there is stillness. You find small solace in the quiet moments, a moment of warmth from the fire, a brief rest beneath the trees while hauling firewood, a shared glance of weary understanding from another thrall across the field. These are your companions, your silent community. They, too, endure. Norse law treated you as property. You could be bought, sold, inherited. Your life was measured in silver coins, and your worth assessed like livestock. And yet, you existed at the very foundation of Viking society. Without you, the farms would fail, the ships would lack timber and sail, and the homes would go cold. Some thralls were skilled artisans. Some worked close to their masters and became trusted, if never quite equal. Others were kept in chains, used for the most degrading tasks, or offered as sacrifices during grim religious rites when the gods hungered for more than prayers. The Norse sagas rarely mention you by name. Your stories are not sung in halls, but your hands shaped the world the Vikings lived in. You were there in the fields, the kitchens, the shadows. And now, as we leave the cold earth of your daily life behind, we turn our gaze upward, toward kings and battles, ambition and destiny, toward a man who tried to shape the fate of Europe and met his end beneath an English sky. Segment 2, The Fall of Harald Hardrada Let. Use now turn our thoughts to a different figure one, whose life was far removed from the toil of the thrall. A man clad not in rags, but in armor. One who claimed kingship, crossed continents, and whose story ended in a quiet field of England. His name was Harald Hardrada. The name itself means hard ruler, a fitting moniker for one who carved his life from war, exile, and relentless ambition. Some call him the last great Viking king, but as we drift gently through his story, we will not ride into battle with him, nor cry out with the fury of war. Instead, let us walk behind him silently, as if observing from the edge of history, watching the slow rise and inevitable fall of a man who reached too far. Imagine Harald not as a myth, but as a boy. He was born around the year 1015, a half-brother of King Olaf, the second of Norway. At just 15 years old, Harald fought at the Battle of Stiklestad, a failed attempt to restore Olaf to the throne. The battle was brutal. Olaf was killed, and Harald, wounded, fled the country, thus beginning a life in exile that would last many years. From the cold shores of Norway, he traveled east, serving as a mercenary and commander in the Varangian Guard of Byzantium. Picture him now no longer a boy, but a tall, imposing man in foreign armor, standing beneath the soaring domes of Constantinople. There, he fought for emperors, guarded palaces, and grew both wealthy and shrewd. It was a different world, with marble streets, silken robes, and intrigues whispered behind ornate screens. Yet Harald never forgot Norway. Years passed. When he finally returned, it was with ships, silver, and soldiers. He claimed the Norwegian throne in 1046, co-ruling for a time before taking full power. And now he ruled with force. Harald was not beloved, but he was respected. He crushed opposition, imposed heavy taxes, and centralized his authority. But Harald wanted more. His ambition cool and steady turned toward England. In 1066, upon the death of Edward the Confessor, the English throne became a prize sought by many. Harald believed he had a claim. He allied with toasted Godwinson, a disgraced English noble, and prepared an invasion. The sea voyage was long. He sailed with hundreds of ships, warriors packed shoulder to shoulder beneath the wind-whipped sails. As they approached the English coast, the autumn air grew heavy with anticipation. Harald was nearly 50 now old for a Viking warrior, but still confident. He believed this would be his final conquest. His legacy. They landed in the north, near the River Humber, and soon triumphed at the Battle of Fulford. York submitted. It seemed the campaign might succeed, but just days later, at a quiet meadow near Stamford Bridge, the tide turned. The English king Harold Godwinson Toastig's brother marched his army north at an astonishing pace. Caught off guard, Harald's forces were scattered, many without armor, having left their chainmail behind in the warmth of the September sun. The two armies met, and the dream of a Norse England ended. Accounts say Harald fought fiercely. He stood tall, wielding a great two-handed sword, but he was struck down perhaps by an arrow to the throat. His death was sudden, unceremonious, and final. The Norwegian army collapsed. Most of their ships were burned or captured. Only a handful of the great fleet returned home. Harald Hardrada's ambition died with him, and with his passing, the age of the Viking warrior kings drew to a close. Now, let the winds of history quiet once more. Let us step away from battles and crowns and turn to something more obscure, more curious. Symbols etched into stone, carved into bone. Secrets written in runes. Segment 3. The hidden language of Viking runes now, as the clash of swords fades and the northern winds settle. Let us sit quietly beside a worn stone, half buried in the moss. Its surface is carved with shapes angular, ancient, mysterious. These are runes, the letters of a lost script, and perhaps something more. Tonight, we will drift into their meanings, their myths, and their many uses, from everyday trade to whispered magic. The Viking world was not just one of strength, but of signs. Let your eyes adjust to the dim glow of a twilight fire. In your hands is a small piece of driftwood or bone, smoothed by time and sea, and across its surface, the faint scratches of the younger Fothark, the rune system used by the Norse during the Viking Age. Its name, like the word alphabet, is simply formed from its first letters F, U, G, A, R, K. The runes were not a spoken language. They were not meant for quick conversation or shouted orders. They were carved slowly, deliberately, each stroke a choice. Their shapes, all straight lines and sharp angles, were designed to be cut into hard materials: wood, bone, antler, and stone. Curved lines would have been too difficult. The runes were used for many things, some ordinary, others far less so. Let us begin with the everyday. A merchant might inscribe runes onto a tally stick to keep track of trade, how many sacks of grain were exchanged, or the value of a shipment of cloth. A rune might be marked on a boundary stone, declaring, "This land belongs to Hrothgar, son of Eirik." Runes appear on tools, cones, sword hilts, personal marks, names, labels. Some were little more than graffiti. In the city of Bergen, preserved beneath layers of mud and time, archaeologists have found wooden rune sticks with messages not unlike modern notes or jokes. One reads, "Gita says you should go home." Another, "I love her with all my heart." These fragments tell us that Vikings used runes not only for trade or law, but for flirtation, for humor, for love. But then there are the runes etched with greater care, those that seem to reach beyond the realm of man toward the unknown. The Vikings believed that runes held power. According to myth, the god Odin discovered the runes through sacrifice. He hung himself from the world tree, Yggdrasil, pierced by a spear, and stared into the void for 9 nights. In his agony, the runes revealed themselves not given, but won. From that moment, the runes were not just letters. They were knowledge. They were magic. Carving a rune, then, was not always an act of writing. It could be an act of invocation. Some rune stones bear inscriptions believed to be charms, for protection, for healing, or for cursing. A particularly famous stone from Sigtuna in Sweden warns, "May he who breaks this stone be struck with misfortune." Others include phrases invoking Thor, calling on divine strength, or warding off evil. There are also references to Galder, magical chants, or incantations that accompanied the runes. The sounds themselves were said to activate the power intoned rhythmically, almost sung, repeating like a mantra beneath one's breath. And yet, the line between sacred and mundane was often blurred. A blacksmith might carve a rune onto a blade for strength. Was it simply a mark of pride? Or a prayer? Perhaps both. Some of the most enigmatic examples are bind runes, 2 or more runes combined into a single symbol, often forming secret messages or charms. Their meanings are frequently lost to us. Even today, scholars puzzle over their intent, their context. Were they declarations, spells, warnings? To look at a rune stone is to stand at the edge of comprehension. You can see the characters, you can read the sounds, but the fullness of meaning remains just out of reach, like a name half remembered in a dream. Even in modern times, the mystique of runes endures. They have been used in fantasy stories, on talismans, in attempts to reclaim ancient wisdom, but their true origin is quieter, more practical, and in some ways, more profound. The runes were not the product of a single mind. They were shaped by a culture that carved its identity into the world letter by letter, line by line. A people whose voices still echo in stone, wood, and myth. Now, as we rise slowly from the runic stones and brush the moss from our thoughts, we make our way to the firelit halls of the powerful. We leave behind symbols and silence and step into a world of feasting, boasting, and rigid honor. Egment 4. Feasting with the jarls. Viking high society now. Let us step softly through the long shadows of twilight and into the warm flickering glow of a great hall. The heavy doors groan open, and you're met with a rush of warmth smoke curling through beams, firelight dancing across shields hung like trophies along the walls, the low hum of voices mixing with the crackle of roasting meat. You've entered the world of the jarls, the Norse elite, chieftains, petty kings, and their retinues. Their lives could not be more different from those of the thralls or even free farmers. Here, power was measured not only in silver and land, but in reputation, hospitality, and the art of the feast. Take a seat at the long table. The benches are sturdy, worn smooth by generations. The hall smells of wood smoke, mead, and roasted lamb. A jarl's feast was not just a meal, it was a performance. A display of wealth, influence, and control over the community. Let's begin at the start of the evening. Feasting is power. The jarl sits at the high seat, flanked by close kin or favored warriors. The hall is crowded with guests. Allied farmers, neighboring chieftains, wandering poets known as skalds, and of course, the household warriors, the herdmen. All are watching, listening. Before any food is served, there are toasts. Great drinking horns are filled with mead or ale, passed around the table. The first toast is usually to the gods, Odin, Thor, or Freyr. Then to the king, if one is acknowledged. Then to the dead. It is not a quick affair. Each guest drinks in turn, solemnly, perhaps speaking a few words. These rituals are ancient, layered with meaning. The jarl's generosity is judged not only by the quantity of food, but by its variety. Whole animals might be roasted on spits. There could be dried fish, stewed turnips, barley bread, berries preserved in honey, and cheeses made from goat or sheep milk. And mead, always mead, flowing freely, golden and strong. But this is not luxury as we know it today. There is no silverware. The hall is smoky, the bench is hard, and the cold still creeps in from the edges. Yet here, it is status that insulates you, the warmth of belonging to power, honor, boasting, and social codes. At such gatherings, boasting was expected, but only within the rules. A man might recount his victories, his voyages, or the fine horse he bred. But if he overstated, or if another guest could prove him false, the consequences could be dire. Shame was not easily forgotten. These boasts often turned into story sagas in the making, and the skalds, seated near the fire, would compose poems on the spot. A good skald could secure lifelong favor. A poor one might be asked to leave in silence. Honor was everything. An insult, even subtle, required a response. Feasts that began with laughter could end in quiet tension. A single wrong word could demand Urgeld, a blood price, or spark a feud that would last generations. Luxury and lineage. While the common Norse slept on straw and rough boards, the jarl's hall might have furs. Imported silk from the east, finely worked metal cups, and decorative beads or brooches from the markets of Hidibi or Burka. These were not only signs of wealth, but proof of reach, that the jarl's ships had gone far, that he traded well, that his household knew the world beyond. His household was often large. Beyond family and warriors, there were household slaves, skilled artisans, and visiting dignitaries. Each had a place in the complex hierarchy. Even in relaxation, structure held firm. In the quieter moments, perhaps late in the night, songs were sung softly, ballads of distant heroes or dirges for the fallen. Someone might pass around a carved game board and lay out pieces for Neverdath, a Viking strategy game. The fire dimmed. The hall grew still. You might imagine the jarl resting his chin on his fist, staring into the embers, thinking not of the feast, but of legacy. For even the powerful knew that one day their deeds would be measured, their names carved into stone or forgotten. Contrasts with the common life in the grand hall. Food was plentiful, and the hearth never cold. But just outside, perhaps only a few hundred feet away, was another reality. The longhouse of the free farmer, with fewer comforts and smaller portions. And beyond that, the thralls' quarters, dark and damp. Yet all were bound together. The jarl's strength depended on his people. His ability to feed and protect them secured loyalty. His failure meant ruin. The Norse world was not strictly divided, but layered, interwoven. A single harvest could raise a farmer to favor, or cast a noble into debt. Power was never permanent. And so, even in the midst of feasting and celebration, there was always a hum beneath the laughter, a reminder that honor was delicate, and that no man, no matter how rich or strong, stood beyond the reach of time. Now the hall is quiet. The last embers of the fire crackle softly, casting slow, lazy shadows across the floor. The benches are empty. The jarl has long since withdrawn to his private quarters. His skalds have laid down their lyres. Outside, the wind stirs through the heather, rustling the thatch and whispering through the trees. You've walked through a world both harsh and rich, unfamiliar and deeply human. You felt the weight of shackles as a Viking thrall, rising in the dark, laboring without rest or reward, your name known to none but your master. You followed the final march of Harald Hardrada, a king whose ambitions outpaced even his legend, and who fell not on his throne, but on the muddy fields of England, his empire unrealized, his name echoing in defeat. You've traced the lines of ancient runes, strange and silent, spoken only by stone and memory. You've glimpsed how words held power, how symbols whispered between the living and the divine, and how mystery clung to every carved mark. And you've sat in the smoky warmth of a jarl's hall, where honor is bartered with mead, where reputation feeds the soul more than the feast, and where even the mighty live beneath the slow, watchful eye of fate. History, especially the quiet kind, does not shout. It murmurs. It waits patiently beneath soil and in stories. It unfolds not with drama, but with detail, meal by meal, word by word, life by life. And in that rhythm, there is comfort. Even in hardship, even in struggle. Because as different as that world may be from yours, its rhythms were still familiar. The same sun rose and set. The same hopes stirred in the hearts of commoners and kings alike. The same questions circled the night sky. Now, perhaps, you find yourself drifting, your breath slow, your thoughts softening. You're no longer in the hall, or on the battlefield, or bent over a ruined stone. You're here, in your own stillness. The past is quiet again. Let it rest. Let yourself drift gently, like a long ship on a glassy fjord, guided by stars that no longer name gods, but still shine just the same. Sleep well.